Good morning. Welcome to Morning Outlook. This is Kim speaking on Friday, the 18th of August. So we start off with looking at the euro dollar, and yesterday was pretty much a sell-off in the morning and a bit of certainly a game of two halves as it bounced later, 12 o'clock onwards. It bounced. Quite a choppy picture we're seeing on this 4-hourly picture now of the week. The past week, it's not been particularly decisive in either direction, and it's not really given me a lot of uh, obvious answers in terms of where from here. We've obviously seen some horrendous terrorist attacks. We've seen Trump, or heard rumours of Trump's advisor, Gary Cohen, was considering stepping down. Um, Now that's affected the US equities market, but has seen the market's pretty flat actually since most of it, but on the forex side. But I'm sure there's some risk off again as we move through these periods. Anyway, for now though, the market on the euro is very flat here. There's very little data coming out today. It's only Canadian data later on, the CPI figure, inflation figure that is, and a bit of US consumer sentiment at 3 o'clock. We've got a FOMC speaker at 3:15, but by that stage the day's pretty made up, isn't it? So for now, looking slow, indecisive. It's already above its daily R1 here. There's a possibility if it starts pushing up, I'd be looking maybe towards yesterday's highs there. Maybe a big ask in what is starting off as a slow market with little to drive it. But if we do see it pushing up through the session, I'd be looking in that direction. Below the daily pivot, I'd be more tempted to be trading towards perhaps just the bodies, yesterday's bodies, as opposed to the absolute lows in the S1, although the probability is good for the R1s and S1s on a day like this when you've seen such quite a rangy day the previous day. The middies and in this case the midpoints would be a more achievable target maybe, even though we could go on and hit those still, of course. Now we have bounced off that monthly pivot, so it's really, I guess, the big question is can it produce any further mileage? But at the moment, is, as I say, indecisive on that. Cable, talk about indecisive, short-term chop over the last couple of days. You can see by the size of these candles, daily candles, they're very small. The ranges are small at the moment. It's obviously very in holiday mode. I've generally stayed away from the trade in the pound this week. I've one trade on the pound and it was a loser. That's how it's been for me. And the euro's been good to me. So, and the yen yesterday. So I'll probably be sticking and keeping away from it. It does look bearish in terms of what I'm looking at. This sort of pattern here is erring more bearish than anything else. Although there was a bit of divergence on those lows, and it hasn't broken those back above those lows yet. So there's, I guess, there's possibilities it could push up, but it's just the way it's consolidated for so long around this phase here, and I'm just thinking, well, maybe there's a trend line across from the lows of yesterday through to the Asian session. If it starts breaking beyond that, maybe we'll see that area tested again. As I say, it does look a bit more on the bearish side, but if it does break the R1, I mean, you see how pinched the pivots are here. It does start breaking above here, the R1, well, there's the possibility back into yesterday's highs, maybe a bit more. As I say, there's very little to drive it from fundamental news. Dollar yen, beautiful trade yesterday on dollar yen. Dollar yen is selling, sold off again yesterday after we took our profit, really. It's pushing back south again at the moment. So this is, we're seeing this is often with risk off. We see the yen benefit from it to some degree, and it's certainly benefiting from it at the moment. That was our trade yesterday. We ran in, caught the daily pivot, and that was it. It did really roll over from that. I thought we might see a bit of a rollover in the afternoon. It sure did. It had a more significant rollover. So today, well, will it go back towards the daily pivot? At the moment, It doesn't look particularly good. Yesterday morning was a bit of a different story. When I started looking at it, there was the beginnings of something which looked like it could go up towards that area today. It's selling off as we're starting the day. It's almost down to the S1 again, which always reduces the probability of the move to the upside. If we see some sort of reversal and a break, then later on maybe of the hourly 8, I may be sort of drawn into the trade a little bit more and look to the upside. But really, at the moment, it's looking pretty bearish. So I'd look for retracements potentially to sell into on the shorter time frames and play the trend for now. Aussie dollar. Well, yesterday ended up selling off again. It's a very odd old pair. Let's just bring it into focus here. So it spent most of the day actually from about 8 o'clock selling off and didn't recover like some of the other pairs, the European pairs. And now it's sitting there. Well, there is the potential for the daily pivot there at some point. I guess it's pretty close to it. It's showing signs that it wants to break back. It's air kissed the 21s there, so maybe, but the target's so tiny. You're talking what's that? 9900, about 15 less than 15 pips. So it's a very small movement potential there to the upside. It could break across and make the full 15 pips and run into that 34, but to me it looks a bit iffy. It's not a pair I like to trade in the mornings, and I would be leaving that. Canadian dollar did the early divergence earlier in the week. It sold off there on Wednesday. Thursday we saw a bit of a rally on that weakness across the with the strength coming through the US dollar, but it's looking like from the 4-hourly, well, it's got back to that weekly pivot affected and is coming off again. It is heading at the moment back towards its daily pivot. Looks like it got a good chance of that now. It's sort of had the spike up with that move on the current candle, so it'd be interesting if it starts breaking down here, whether we can push down further. Maybe it starts, as I say, starts pushing further south with some strength. We could see the S1 hit sort of that sort of area. I think it may be a big ask for yesterday's lows to be hit with the range and with the lack of data coming out. Although there is inflation data coming out at 1:30, so perhaps that may give it a bit more of a kicker if it comes out higher than expected. That's pretty much it for me. There's nothing else here. As I say, news-wise, it's pretty quiet today. So we're left to the technicals, and at the moment, apart from the yen, which is just continuing to sell off as I'm talking to you, well, I think the markets may all head in that southerly direction, a lot of them anyway. Have a good one. Take care. Bye for now.